through the whole process, I didn't quite get my VAT forecasting right.
Hmm.
And a £40,000 VAT bill dropped on my
Oh
mat
no.
about 6 months in, I think it was a few months into it. My eldest daughter, who is now 18, was one at the time, and we lived above the pub. So it was, it was the house, it was my family. It's like, we can't afford this.
From Swoop, it's Take the Plunge, a podcast about how business owners decided to stop what they were doing and took the plunge to start their own business. We take a look at how they came to that decision and what those first crucial steps were in getting their business up and running. My name is Kieran and I'll be your host for this episode. Today I'm very excited to be joined by our next guest, Hannah Dawson, CEO and founder of Futrli. Futrli is the only all-in-one forecasting and reporting tool for small businesses and accountants. With over 60,000 businesses and 1,500 advisors supported in over 130 countries, Futrli is on a mission to move the needle on the small business economy. Their mission is to give every business the opportunity to make it by taking control of their financial future and making the right decisions using their education, tools, and products. You're very, very welcome, Hannah. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Kieran?
Yeah, very good.
Good.
It's Friday. Restaurants and bars are open. It's a good day.
It's Life's getting better. It is.
Yeah. Well, if I can take you back beyond the COVID mist to the very beginning of Futurely, so to speak, can you let
Mhm.
me know kind of what you were doing before Futurely and kind of why did you decide to set the business up?
Sure. I think Futurely was probably set up for quite a dramatic reason, but I'll take you back. So my background was hospitality. I fell into it after university, managed restaurants and so on in Glasgow, and then in 2003 decided to buy a pub in the middle of nowhere in Devon.
Wow.
So it had been in my family for over 100 years. But the very long story short is that whilst I'd run restaurants before, the actual business side of things, there was always a head office, right? And
Hmm.
things like VAT returns and tax, all of that fun jazz. Well, you don't do that when you're the manager, it's
Hmm.
the payroll function, NICs, all that fun stuff. So whilst I was really hot on all of the operational side of things, the full, financial, profit and loss balance sheets, cash flow, all of that
Hmm.
piece was, something that I learned about. It was dial up back then, I am old. And so I used to go to the library and I used to, get books and read about, double entry accounting. I'm like, oh my God, what is this? And then my accountant back in the day sold me a copy of Sage 50 Desktop because that's what they used to do.
Yeah.
And then I saw him a year later,
Yeah.
because again, that's what
That's what
used to
you did.
happen. And in that year, I did a million spreadsheets. I was, month end would happen, and you'd have invoices like this because, of course, in a pub and restaurant, you're generating so much stuff every day,
Yeah.
and running at a 6 to 8 week time lag. But through the whole process, I didn't quite get my VAT forecasting right.
Hmm.
And a £40,000 VAT bill dropped on my
Oh
mat
no.
about 6 months in, I think it was a few months into it. My eldest daughter, who is now 18, was one at the time, and we lived above the pub. So it was the house, it was my family. It's like, we can't afford this. Now, my
Wow.
family amazingly bailed us out.
Yeah.
But that was, not everyone gets to be in that
No.
position. And the fear that I experienced that day, and until the problem was solved, they have been paid back, by the way, that definitely has happened. That I genuinely, it was one of those things. I will never feel like this again. I made a
Hmm.
promise to myself, I will
Hmm.
never feel like this again. So I really ramped up my learning. I learned about management accounts. I really got, I wanted to understand what I'd done
Hmm.
wrong. Now, that's quite an extreme reaction. Not every business owner wants to do that. I'm also really comfortable with numbers. Not every
Yeah.
business owner is comfortable with
Hmm.
numbers. But there's no, driving test for setting up a business. When
Hmm.
my eldest was learning to drive, she's got to do a theory test, she's got to do practical. Don't need to do any of that. You can just register a business and off you
Yeah.
go. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that we all together as, software vendors and, trying to help small businesses, that leveling up and just taking away fear and giving people the skill set to go, I know what to look for. I know what questions to ask myself. I know what questions to ask my accountant, and not feeling stupid, because
Mm.
also I felt totally stupid in my first ever meeting with my accountant because my business didn't even look like my business when I was asked to sign my year-end accounts. The first time you have to sign
Yeah.
your year-end
Yeah.
accounts. And it's gone through, I know now, tax preparation software like Iris or CCH,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and so the whole chart of accounts looks different. And you're like, okay, and then they
Mm.
say, right, you sign it. I'm like, okay, you
But
prepared that. It doesn't look like my business and my chart of
yeah.
accounts. You sign it, and just and I think that just sets the tone with so many
Yeah.
small businesses and their accountants going forward. They're like, well, okay, I can't, well, I don't know what
Yeah.
to do. Fine, I'll just,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Little
that was a
prayer.
very long-winded way to get to why Futrli was founded.
Hmm.
My first foray was after I sold my pub I was going to be a hospitality advisor, did some AAT qualifications because I am a nerd and I do love a spreadsheet, and very quickly realized that the problem that I had back in the day with that VAT problem and not understanding the future and not understanding how the decisions I was making today impacted my future
Mm.
potentially, and how many different futures I could have, if I
Yeah.
do this
Yeah. Yeah.
instead of something else, that wasn't limited to hospitality.
Yeah.
That's a problem that every small business has. And the majority of small businesses, sadly, because they don't have that great relationship with a trusted advisor, or there isn't that theory
Mm.
test or whatever, they don't know that there's a different way. They don't know that they can make
Yeah.
safer decisions within the realms of their financial, future,
Yeah.
and test things out. So
Yeah.
that's my
Uh,
mission,
uh,
where,
uh,
sorry, go on.
yeah. No. 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 Thanks so much for kind of going into it. I suppose like that was a pretty big journey in its own right in terms of going from I have a pub,
Yeah,
now I have a
indeed.
giant bill, and I'm now learning all about kind of forecasting VAT. And I suppose at what point during kind of that nerding up, so to speak, did you kind of realize there's a business here and I'm going to go for it, and this is what I need to do to get operational?
Um, to jump to becoming
Yeah.
Futurely, yeah. So it would be I had a first foray into hospitality software because I
Yeah.
wanted to get that operational, live, impactful, live
Yeah.
data thing sorted. It was dreadful, awful piece of software.
Yeah.
We did sell it. We did have Tesco's as a customer when we sold it. I don't
That's
quite know
pretty
how we
good.
managed to do that,
Yeah.
but yeah. But it was through that process that it was like, hold on, this is a greater issue.
Yeah.
So I think I learned a lot of how not to do things in the first one,
Mm.
the first software company. Just, you know, I think with hospitality, for instance, you start off as a waitress. I then got promoted and all of it, and so you learn the job as you go
Hmm.
through, and you kind of learn to do other people's jobs as well as, if not better than them, and that's where I was certainly when I sold my pub. Going into software was a baptism of fire, right? I've
Mm.
not written a line of code in my life. Hadn't designed at that point, and it's been a really steep learning curve, and
Mm.
crikey, there's been some massive mistakes along the way, but yeah.
And I suppose in terms of that, like going into something so daunting like software or writing code when you have zero background in it,
Mhm.
how do you find a way through it? Where there's some kind of crucial people that helped
Yeah.
you at the beginning? How did you do it?
So I needed to prove to myself that the idea would work in the first place. So I created this megalodon spreadsheet, which basically was the software to
Yeah,
prove that it would
got you.
work, and
Yeah.
then found a business in Brighton that had 50 sites, to test it on, a handful of them, just to see if it would really improve their reporting
Mm.
and
Mm.
their ability to make decisions faster in the life cycle, which it did. So that was the spur on for the first one. I then found I didn't have any engineer. It was completely outsourced to, like, it was a UK company, but I had to really, again, I'm a big, I did my master's in English, so I'm a reader. So I would
Yeah.
do, like, how to manage software development, what is the waterfall method, what's agile, and just
Yeah.
got myself in the weeds, but I suppose the big, step up was actually working alongside a company in Brighton called Dab who were absolutely brilliant. So when we
Yeah.
set up Futrli to begin with, I didn't have any. I'd got two engineers from the other product who were straight out of university, and then Chris at DabApps he kind of mentored me and helped
Good.
me understand what the right processes were and all of that. But that's just the technical side of things. I guess on the other side, you've got funding and how'd you
Mm.
fund this thing? So we had some
Nice and
money from,
stressful.
well, exactly, we had some money from the sale of the other one, but friends and family, angel investment kicked us off, and we were basically bootstrapped until we hit profitability in 2018. And then that's when we did our Series A raise.
Amazing. Talk to me about, okay, you talked about getting that first customer in Brighton
Mm.
and getting the 50 sites. Was it hard getting them? And were you like nervous seeing like this is kind of make or break? Am I going to get any kind of results
Yeah,
here?
yeah.
How,
Well, I'd worked for 3 months just myself on this thing, and testing it and iterating it and then working on it. So, I guess a lot of that process, it's still product development, isn't it?
yeah,
And getting that
absolutely.
iterative feedback. So it was a friendly introduction. Oh, I know someone who can, and it was one of those, serendipity hits. And it's, I think, so much, you make your own luck in life, I think. But,
Yeah,
if you have friends, family, bloody ask them, do you know anyone? Get out there. I mean, social media
yeah.
wasn't as prevalent as it was now, but I think it was back. I think it was Friends Reunited back then, not Facebook, that we were using. God, I'm really showing my age. But it was really important for me to understand what the demographic was, what the business was. I had to do that with a pub. Like we had a £500,000 worth commercial loan to buy the pub, backed by my parents. That guaranteed their house on the back of it. But we I had a thick business plan, and I'd done a
Mm,
lot of research on it because that process in itself answered some of my own questions and stopped me going down paths that would have actually ended up in disaster.
mm,
The pub was doing 175K when we bought it, and it was doing just under 1 million when I sold it. So, and it
mm,
we really did make it work, but without going through the steps and the hoops. And this is what I come back to with that leveling up piece of, right, who's your demographic? What do the competition look like? What are you going to sell it for? What's your USP?
mm.
Are you selling it to everybody, or is it a small niche
Yeah.
thing? How are you going to do that? You have to ask yourself these questions
Mm,
constantly, in fact.
mm.
It never stops, and it doesn't stop now, with the
Yeah.
new product development we've got.
Yeah, taking it kind of further from obviously you've got it out there, you got a bit of traction. Then okay, you've now got to bring people into the business. It's been
Mm.
you building, as you say, a megalithon spreadsheet. How did you take it from you to many? What was that process like, and who were the people you brought in at the start?
Sure. There's been ups and downs there, and I think
Mm.
that's one thing. I think when you're a founder, you think that every problem that you face is the first time anyone's ever faced that problem, which of course is not true. But the first hiring was, an interview where I was just basically faking it till I make it, with my student employees. Yeah, yeah, totally. This is what we've got. It's got this software company, blah blah. But I mean, actually, we said goodbye to one engineer yesterday, Steve, who'd been with us for 6 years, and he in his goodbye message was like remembering him there in a suit and tie with his interview with me, and Chris, who I referenced earlier, just helping me. I think if you don't know, ask for help. Don't
Yeah.
suffer in silence. It can be really lonely running a business, and it doesn't necessarily need to be.
Mm.
People like to help, so I
Yeah.
I got Chris to help me with the interviewing, and then as we scaled, we've had talent acquisition in house and people managers and chief of people, and you know I would very much advise on scaling slowly on the people
Yeah.
front. It's generally one of your biggest expenses, if not the biggest expense, and certainly in software, you can burn through
Oh,
that
you
capital
can.
really quickly. So we've made the decision. We've been really R&D heavy at Futurely for because we've been doing new product development with
Mm.
Predict, which is kind of this next generation in forecasting technology that we've been building for probably a year too longer than we should have been, but to have a greater end result. And so I've made the decision with my chief team that, the best thing for us to do to be fiscally responsible is to, rebalance the team. So we're growing the sales team now. The engineering team's it's being rebalanced. And so you may well go through cycles. There's, whatever your business industry, whatever your industry is, where you do need to make some tough decisions, and some people will need to go, but you'll then rehire another, and that's
Mm.
never nice.
Yeah.
It's nice when you're hiring. Just had, my 7 a.m. start with my two new starters in Australia this morning. So,
Nice.
and it's good. So
I'm
it's
I'm
all good.
very
But
I'm very appreciative of this. The time difference going back for Australia makes those morning calls a little bit more
yeah,
easier.
it does. But yes, without question. Otherwise it's late nights, which are
Yeah.
just, but yeah, just I think the people side of things is probably the steepest learning curve. It was for me. But also learning, how do you scale then that next level of management so that
Mm.
you're not in the weeds all the time?
How do you do
You
that?
know, well, God, just learning every day still. I mean, I'm really lucky that I've got Helen, my COO, and Doug, my CTO, who they basically manage everybody else, and I theoretically manage them, but I don't. They probably manage me. So luckily for everybody else in the business, I'm not their line manager. I'm not going to go into that. But you've got directive management and you've got
Yeah.
supportive management, and where do you sit? And learning, that man management piece of, some people respond to, honey, and some people you need a
Hmm.
stick, and it's relentless.
Yeah.
But I think making sure that you've got that as a company, you agree, and not in a pithy way, but you just agree some core values that you want the business to stand for,
Yeah.
and agree with your employees how they want to be managed too.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be top down. I've learned when we had 95 employees at one point, and we had this next layer down of management, and then team leads below that. And, as a founder, you always need to be able to look through the lenses of every
Hmm.
single layer, and the other lenses need to be able to look up to you, because I think one lesson I have learned, which I wish I'd known, is that very often that first like VP layer, or your next layer down, well, they want to get up to where you are. And there might be a prism that the message from the top goes through and slightly comes out in a different way. So it's just understanding that communication needs to be really
Mm.
transparent, so that every stakeholder within the business knows the message, what message is, why there's a message, and where
Mm.
it's coming from, and it's
Mm.
not been interpreted in a different way. Sorry.
Yeah, and I suppose just on the communication side of things, but as opposed to internally looking outside, your product is aimed primarily at small businesses and
Hmm.
accountants, which by nature can be sometimes hard to get en masse.
Hmm.
By their nature, small businesses owners tend to be incredibly busy. They're highly suspicious. They're tough they're tough to customers to sell to, I would say. So
Hmm.
how have you gone about doing that over the last 6 years, and kind of what are some of the kind of tactics you've used along the way?
Our primary channel is through accountants today. We are, the big plan for the business is to try and balance that out, so that we
Mm.
actually, that we've got, I mean, about 45% of our subscriptions are actually from small businesses direct, but that represents a far lesser proportion of revenue, because accountants, it's a one to many sell typically. So how do we do it? Well, I think small business, it's not a B2B sell, it's a B2C sell. We're
Hmm.
actually selling to a consumer. And the reason that we focus on the accounting channel, and we continue to do so this year primarily, is because we know them. We already have an asset of those customers. But the big plan is to, I think, with any B2C sell, your brand needs to be recognized. You're probably going to need to do out of home advertising. Your digital needs to be on point. If you look at Zero, for instance, there's it's an engine. You have to have a
Mm,
bloody good marketing engine, referral schemes, all of those things. And it's a very different product market fit, go to
yeah.
market, and you need to be able to waste money. You need to have enough money to spend on it to
Yeah.
waste before you find your secret sauce for your unit economics.
I suppose just on that, kind of, I'm always curious on this point, like, how daunting is that for you as a business owner, to basically, as you say, you have to spend, particularly if it's a B2C play,
Mhm.
a great whack load of cash
Yeah.
on, and how do you feel going through that? Is it a daunting process?
Yeah, well, it is, and we had a foray last year, and it was actually, do you know what, we just need predicted just come out. It was, let's get the product market fit right for our accountants first with them,
Hmm.
and then Predict Plus, which is the, accountant overlays, has happened off the back of that, which has been brilliant. I think particularly in SaaS, what you can, speaking to our board and so on, and other CEO networks, if you can work out your unit economics on a predictable, repeatable basis, it doesn't need, you need to have enough time to experiment on it. It's really that time band. You know, you might have a 5 grand budget, and on that 5 grand budget, you're going to do these tests, but it's going to be a 6 month test over
Hmm.
those, per month. So you've
Hmm.
attributed 30K. But the point is, you need to know if I spend £1, I get this back, and I know I get it
Hmm.
back.
Hmm.
Well, then you can start pouring money into it. Then you go for another raise. Then you can go and, people will give you money at that point.
Yeah.
That's, it's understanding, yes, we have got enough of a cash buffer now to put aside, I don't, 50 grand, 100 grand, 200 grand on this.
Yeah.
I think it's also interesting learnings from people like iZettle.
Hmm.
And I know that whenever they launched into new markets, they always focused on the capital city and did out of home. They did a fully broad ranged attack on the capital city first, and it's built out from there,
Hmm.
which is quite an interesting one. So I think, when we do it, we're in Brighton. Brighton's
Yeah.
got 16,000 small businesses. Let's take on Brighton and
Yeah.
get them future lead up.
Just talking again into that kind of growth path, you've
Mm.
obviously 6 years on scaled quite a bit. Like, what have been some of the challenges you faced in scaling the business?
Scaling too quickly,
Yeah.
headcount scaling too quickly for sure. When, as a leader, I probably wasn't mature enough at the time, and that's harsh to admit, but it's true. I think that, your gut instinct, the risks that you'll take as an entrepreneur, your optimism that you have, because why would you put your family through it otherwise? Self-reflection is something that I've become quite good at now. I will give myself some praise and say, I think when you're younger, you can be quite bullish and I know
Mm,
best. And I would much rather seek help and get counsel and try and find people who have walked the path in my specific use case before me. There's lots of different software companies. We're not enterprise SaaS. We don't
hmm.
have annual contracts like, we're not selling $200,000 contracts for 2 years. So the advice that a CEO of that type of business can give me versus someone who's actually done a B2C play really successfully with small bit, do you know what I mean? So it's
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
finding the right counsel. But yeah, I think probably the most difficult thing has been scaling and managing cash flow. Like it's
Mm, yeah.
we have a cash flow app, but it's the challenge. It's making
Yeah.
sure the timing is right for the right decisions.
Like, how have you found that? Like, because obviously you've taken on external finance along the way.
Mhm.
You've had successful raises, but like, how do you know? I suppose, is it gut feel? Okay, we need to get a certain amount of cash in now to accelerate on this growth, or kind of how do you manage that process?
So we're next month we'll be at operational break even. So from a
Hey,
financial perspective, way, which is great, which
that's
gives us
bloody
time.
awesome.
Well, we've made some tough decisions, through it,
Yeah.
and we've, reduced headcount in some areas. Like I say, we're scaling it in others now, so
Mm.
it'll be back up before we know it. But it, I think certainly in our sector, I think you'll probably agree, Kieran, that the pressure to grow, 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 go, 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 this hockey stick has to be there.
Yeah.
And most businesses don't hockey stick. They're called unicorns for reasons.
Yeah.
They're national
Yeah.
national animal of Scotland, by the way, unicorn.
Yeah.
It's true that. And we've made the decision to go right. We have to take. So we've not got any cash burn issues now. We're
Right.
self-funded, which means that we can take our time a bit
Yeah.
more to go right. We're going to nail this channel first. We're then going to use that to fund the experimentation in the other channel. At that point, once we've got our unit economics right on the direct and certainly on the accounting side, we go
Hmm.
and we raise again. It's that I just think the being fiscally responsible
Yep.
for your business, because ultimately every small business, and we're still a small business, we're not we're in the grand scheme of things, we are. There are families behind this.
Hmm.
You're not doing it for, chits and giggles. You're doing
Yeah.
it because you believed in something, you had a purpose, but ultimately you want to support your family, you want them to have a nice life, you probably want to go on some decent holidays, you might want to retire a bit earlier. There's physical and emotional impact in everything that you're doing. So taking the pressure off yourself if you can,
Hmm.
to breathe, think, get counsel, make sure that you're in a strong financial position. And the only way you know that you can do that is by making decisions within the realms of your financial forecast. There's no other way of doing it.
Hmm.
I'm sure you're not running your, Swoop on gut instinct, are you? Um,
I hope not.
no, no. I
Yeah.
don't
No.
know. Lots of answers there.
Well, no, a lot of sage advice, right there. Reflecting back then a little bit on the 6 years, yes, there's been challenges, but I imagine there's been some pretty good moments and some nice highs. So, like, what sticks out for you in terms of those
Well,
big
I mean,
highlights?
Christmas parties are always quite good fun.
Dangerous.
The recordings of the karaoke. Yes, I am that
Yeah.
person. Oh God, look, we've had loads. I mean, I think, product releases. We launched Futrli by what was called Crunchboards back in the day. We launched it in Australia at ZeroCon in Sydney after 9 months of development. I'd it was the flight that I booked was a Malaysia Air flight, 2 weeks after
After
the
the, oh wow,
crash. Yeah. Oh yeah. It
bro.
was cheap, very cheap,
Yeah, I
and we
get
we and we
opportunistic.
had no money. We had no
Yeah.
money at all. And so, and we went out, never been to Australia before in my life. Asked Michael Wood at Receipt Bank. I'd reached out to him, just because he's also from Aberdeen. I'm like, right, you went to Robert Gordon's
Yeah.
school just down the road from me, so you can give me some
Yeah.
advice. And just completely idiotic, and then launched in Australia in our first year. Like, what are you doing? Mental, but brilliant at the same time. Obviously, getting the raise was amazing. Meeting some incredible CEOs through my the VC
Yeah.
network now has been
Yeah.
brilliant.
Awesome.
Launching Predict has been fab, and I'm so excited about the prediction technology we've built and
Hmm.
how it genuinely can impact
Yeah.
mass small businesses who don't need to know about, journals and double entry posting, because it just makes all things, their whole business, nailed. So yeah, there's been some really good stuff. And you know what? Every day I get to work with my best friend Helen, so that's
Yeah.
also
That's,
a
that's
joy.
awesome. Well, I can't think of a better way to finish it up there. Hannah,
And
can't
obviously
thank you
doing
enough.
podcasts with you,
Oh
Kieran,
yeah, of course.
and webinars with
Anytime.
Andrea. I mean,
Yeah.
frankly, those are,
Well, you two
our
are a bit of
webinars.
a dream team on that. Jesus, I've never seen the numbers you guys get in.
It's
It's like the
brilliant.
Ant and
I
Deck
love
of
her.
the accountancy industry or
We need to
something.
make sure we're always sat on the right side.
I,
We've still not actually met each other in person
I,
yet because of bloody
oh,
lockdown. I know, it's
oh,
ridiculous.
madness. Yeah, it just,
There,
yeah, you
there shall
guys
be
get,
wine
you,
drunk.
yeah, no doubt. Margaritas as well if Andrea's involved.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, as I said, thanks so much, Hannah. It's been so
Pleasure.
lovely just to kind of hear the story and just you've given so much good advice and obviously wishing all the best for Futurely and
Thank you.
Predict going forward. And yeah, thanks so much. And
Kieran, thank you.